With the release of Transformers Rise of the Beast, I figured I'd talk about the new, not new, excuse me. I am on 2 hours sleep right now. I did not sleep well at all last night, but I figured I'd talk about the Bumblebee prequel, from Transformers way back in 2018, and, talk about the other five Transformers movies because it's a summer series that I still come back to every now and again. But I'll give my thoughts, obviously, on the new film since I'm watching it later this week on Thursday, and I will give my thoughts on the other five Transformer movies from Michael Bay. But I'll talk about the prequel first. Obviously, this is from a different timeline, but all the Michael Bay movies stuff aside, this movie is obviously trying to wipe the slate clean. This isn't following the same Michael Bay verse. It might. I don't see a reason why it would. But for the most part, this is probably my number one Transformers movie, up there with the first Michael Bay Transformers movie, if not better. This is my favorite live action Transformers movie. And the reason why I say that is because it doesn't have to be a bunch of, big city battles. Not that there's anything wrong with that, of course, but it seems like that as soon as the Michael Bay movies specifically, as they kept going forward and everything, it got more and more convoluted, which I will obviously talk about later on, but they also just stopped, they weren't scaled movies. They were always big movies. And that's why I appreciate this movie a lot more, is because it's smaller in scale. It's like the Iron Giant, but with Transformers, which isn't a bad idea. I'm not going to say that this movie's flawless or anything. This movie has tons of flaws, like the main character, Charlie. She has a dead dad, and it's not as interesting as it should. And her family, I'm sorry to say, is also not that interesting. I feel like no matter how good the Transformers stuff is, if they keep adding humans, it's just not any good. I mean, we just want to see Transformers. And that's why, this movie also suffers for me, because there are a lot of human elements, which I get it. Transformers crash landing on Earth. You have to get the humans' reactions, but I just find that stuff very uninteresting. But I'm just going to mention that the first, 10-15 minutes of this movie, you get the entire battle of Cybertron. And it's with the classic Transformer designs that you've seen from the 80s. The G1 designs, and that was a joy to see. I didn't see it on the big screen, unfortunately, but when I did watch it, I realized this movie is ultimately a love letter to the original Transformers series and also original 80s film, which I haven't seen in quite some time, but it was still really, really neat to see. Then, it's set in the late 80s, in 89, I believe. The new one that's coming out on Friday, which I will see this Thursday, is set in 1994, I believe. Sorry, I'm very spacing out. But Bumblebee, it's a decent movie. I'm not gonna go out of my way and say, again, it's a masterpiece, but I will say it's an enjoyable film. I mean, there are issues with it. Again, I just wish the, Transformer battles were longer. The human stuff is kind of whatever. There's a couple of good moments here and there, but it's mostly just with Charlie the main character, interacting with Bumblebee. And let me just say, Bumblebee in general is a cute character. He's, in a way, charming. No matter how silent the character is, he's still adorably charming. I love the character. In fact, I like all the characters in Transformers. Obviously, my criticism for the Michael Bay movies will, start to, I'll shed my light on those movies eventually, but I just wanted to talk about this movie, especially since the new one is releasing later on this week, and I'll obviously give my thoughts on it. And the new one is a sequel technically to this movie, so I figured let's just do them in order. I'll give my very brief thoughts on this, but there's my overall brief thoughts on the movie. It's really good. It's up there with the first movie, which I will give my thoughts on as well. But yeah, it's a good movie, and the effects too are really, really well done. This is actually in the first movie, which I will talk about later, and explain more. Is that the effects aren't always that great, but in this movie, I feel like the effects are always great. There's never a moment where I feel like the CGI is out of place or it's very clearly CGI. Yes, the opening Cybertron battle, you do get a lot of CGI scenes, but it's really good CGI. And I'm pretty sure they use like practical puppets. I could be very much wrong, but yeah, the movie's really good. I will give my overall thoughts on the other movies, on the Michael Bay movies, after I watch the new one coming out this Thursday, which I will see later on that afternoon, so I should be able to have time to give my brief thoughts on that movie once it's done.